Okay. So we're going to record to the cloud. We got that going. Anybody else jumps in, we'll make sure to grab them. We're going to cover some stuff today that is important. Some of it may seem repetitive, but it's important. And here's why. Where did the participant thing go? There it is. All right, I'm back on track. Here's why. You're about, unless something changes, which it won't, you're about 4 weeks away officially from the biggest shift in real estate in my career, probably the history of real estate. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to spend just a little bit of time. I did do, as promised, I did do the recheck of your online profile this morning. I told you I'd give you to the 15th and made it all the way to the 20th. I'll give you some thoughts on that. I will give you an update. Hold on, we got to admit one. I will give you an update on listing process, and I'm talking specifically about a listing that does not want to pay a commission to a buyer's agent. I'll give you kind of my recap on that, my experience around that, and my solution. And then we will get into quickly going through, as quickly as we can, going through, once again, the BRBC form, because it has changed. I'll take you through that form again, at least in its current model. And I'll take you through a couple of forms that are going to need to be attached to that BRBC form in order for it to mean anything. BRBC form, if you have forgotten, is the buyer's representation agreement that will be mandatory sometime in July. I think it's July 20th, maybe July 23rd, but sometime in July. So beginning in July, if you get caught representing a buyer without a signed agreement in place, it would be no different than you taking a listing to the MLS without having a signed listing agreement. You're up for sanctioning, you're up for losing your license, you're up for a fine to the brokerage. If you get a fine to the brokerage, I won't be happy. And it's just a bad thing. You don't want to do it. So as we've been talking for months and months and months, step one now, or at least in the top 3 steps of you talking to someone about representing them for real estate on the purchase side of things, you're going to have to talk about sitting down and signing an agreement. We're going to go through that agreement. If it was me, I would do it now. I would literally do it right now. I would start today moving forward. I would execute that agreement, because you don't want to be the person that has a relationship going with the buyer, and then all of a sudden you realize on the 20th of July that, oh crap, I got to get this done, and then springing it on them. At least start talking about it now, right? Especially if you're like me, I've still got those same 2 people I haven't placed, right? Same 2 people I haven't placed. I've been working with these people for more than a year, off and on, off and on, off and on. They go out, they shop, they get frustrated, they quit. They come back 30 days later, they shop again, they get frustrated, they quit, and the cycle continues. So now I've got on my calendar either, over this weekend or at some point next week of having a phone call with both of those groups, sitting them down and saying, hey guys, I know you've heard about this, but now it's time for us to talk about it. And now it's time for us to actually execute an agreement. So we'll go through that. Okay. First off, on the agent audit review, I will say this, not a lot has changed. I saw a few improvements here and there, which is good. But the good news is that many of you still have a ways to go. I'm not going to pressure you anymore on this other than to say this. If you are not in position to have that presence made strongly when all of this stuff changes, you're going to have real problems, okay? The entire world is going to try to be deciding who's going to stay and who's going to quit real estate, and only the strong will survive. I went to lunch with someone today from I've got a relationship with this guy. We've been talking about going back and forth and working together for a while now. We've become friends throughout that process. And he works for a fairly large company, that not to be named, but a fairly large company. And he said, hey, I wanted to let you know that my company with over 500 agents is having its first mandatory meeting today about all of the changes that are coming. Today. First they've heard of it. First they've talked about it as a group. First they've talked about it as a company today. And he skipped the meeting to come to lunch with me because he already feels like he knows more than they're going to tell him from us going to lunch once every month or so for the past year, right? Imagine that. Imagine being introduced to that at the brokerage level for the first time today, a month away, right? You guys are sick of hearing about it because you've been hearing about it for so long. Can you imagine being some poor sap in a company of 500 agents hearing about it today and going, what? Right? Not to mention, do you think the broker or the office manager or whoever the hell's giving the meeting knows what the hell they're talking about? They have no clue, right? I'll premise it by saying this also. None of us have any clue about exactly what's going to happen because we don't know. The MLS still hasn't told us what fields there's going to be and what fields there's not going to be and what we can say and what we can't say. We still don't know, right? So a lot of this is prep to have options, to be in position to take care of all this as soon as it happens and as soon as we know. You guys are miles ahead. Trust me, you are miles ahead of everybody else in the industry. I cannot believe that this certain company that is really huge in all of our counties, who I shall not mention, that starts with an H, okay? And there's an I in there. I won't mention them, but they literally have not spoken about this at the company level until today, 10 o'clock today. We're having a mandatory meeting about the changes. It's ridiculous. All right, so back to the seller. I've been telling you that when we talk to sellers, we need to lean heavy into the fact that, hey, look, you may not want to pay a commission, and I'm going to, abbreviate all of this. If you want more detail, yell at me, tell me to stop, do something, and I'll slow down. But we got a lot to cover, so I don't want to, dig in deep. So I've been telling you, we got to get a buyer's commission. We got to get a buyer's commission. Here's 5 top reasons you need to pay a buyer's commission. You got to do your job. You got to tell them they got to do it. You got to fight with them. And I did all that. And this dude is like, no. Okay. This is probably, yesterday afternoon was probably phone call number 12 after site visit number 4 of me telling him why he's got to pay a commission. And then he got to the point where he's decided to cut my commission, bad idea, and the buyer's commission, it just going around and around in circles. And I've gotten to the point where I realized there is just no way in hell I'm going to be able to get this guy to pay 2.5% or 2%. It's just not going to happen. Okay. What I'm telling you, or what I want you to get first and foremost, is that when you run into this, and even though look, this is going to make this listing difficult because I'm not going to be able to offer any kind of cooperating commission or the right kind of cooperating commission or whatever, you still got to take the listing. Okay? You still got to take it. None of us are in the position to be like turning down listings. Okay? So you still got to take the listing. And I might suggest this. This is where I ended up yesterday. After all these meetings and after all these talks, hours and hours and hours, I said, great. You know what? I'm going to go your way. I'm going to let us not pay what I think we should pay. Okay? We're going to go to market. And since it's going to be after the cut, they're still not ready to go to actual market. It's going to be after the cut. It's going to be after the changes. We're going to do it like this. I know, Mr. Seller, that you're willing to pay 1.5. I know that. Okay? But we're not going to post that anywhere. We're going to keep that in our pocket. Okay? You're still going to pay me 2.5. It's non-negotiable. That's going to be in writing. But the 1.5 that you're willing to pay, we're going to keep in our pocket. And when I write the listing, or when I put the listing out to MLS, depending on what they'll allow me to say, because I don't know what that is, it'll say something like this. Compensation available please include your request with your offer. Okay. And then we'll analyze our offers and we'll analyze what we've got and we'll make decisions based on what we receive. Why did I do that? Because here's why. I think that if there is an offer on the table for them to sell this house and some agent says, I want 2.5, all of a sudden, everything becomes negotiable within the counter, right? You want 2.5, fine, then we need a little more on the purchase price. You want that purchase price? Well, then we can't go 2.5. Okay. We're going to find a way to agree and get an agent paid and get the house sold versus me saying point blank in whatever part of the MLS, hey, look, I'm only paying 1%. Right? I don't think that's a good idea. So rather than that, and this is an experiment for me, just like it will be for you guys and for the whole damn market. Rather than that, I think we say compensation available, make it part of your offer request. The way that they will request that after that date, I know already because there's a form. The buyer's agent will be making a request directly to the seller on a second form for compensation. They're not going to request it from me. They're not going to request it through the offer. They're going to make that request directly to the seller. Okay. So the seller is going to be making decisions on two fronts. Going to be making a decision on compensation, going to be making a decision on the offer. Well, I don't believe that you can counter a request for compensation. Right? At least not yet. There's no box. So if the agent is smart and says, I want 2.5, we're really only we've got the agent taken care of. Now we're really only talking about one thing, aren't we? The purchase price on the contract. Right? So I'm going to try it. If you guys run into it, I might suggest that method. Okay. And, we'll see how it goes. Nobody knows how it's going to go. We'll see how it goes. Questions on that or what my thinking is or how that flows or anything before we move on? Does that make sense to you why I decided to go that route? It's not my proudest moment, I'll be honest, but it was the only way that I think that we can go to market effectively. I'll be totally transparent. I am still nervous about taking any listing to market with a lack of some kind of cooperated compensation. I don't like that. I don't think it's going to go well. I don't have enough faith in the quote unquote buyer's agents of the world to know, hey, it's okay. If he only says 1%, there's still a way for me to get more. I can handle that. I don't have that comfort level with them. And I think that buyer's agents will steer. And they'll steer to where they can get paid more money. So without having that option, and it's gonna require some effort on my part, right? If I say compensation is available, include it with your offer, what's the first thing that's going to happen? Does everybody know what the first thing that's going to happen is going to be?
I'm breaking out the calculator.
Yeah, that agent is going to call me or text me and say, "What's that mean? Explain it to me." And I'm going to have to go through a whole process and a whole exercise to break that down, while maintaining a fiduciary duty to my client, the seller. Right? So it's going to go something like, well, what that means, Mr. or Mrs. Agent, is that we are willing to compensate. We don't understand or we don't know for sure at what level. You're going to need to make that request as part of your offer. And you're going to need to make that request on this form. And chances are good that I'm going to have to tell them how to fill it out. Right? So it's going to be way more impactful than any other listing has been on me just automatically. It's It's going to take a lot more time. It's going to put me in a tricky spot potentially at times because I've got to maintain my duty to my client. But one of my duties is also to get their house sold. Okay. So it's just, I just don't know. I don't know how it's going to go. Nobody knows how it's going to go. Nobody knows how we're going to have to word it. If they say they know how it's going to go, or they say they know how we're going to have to word it, they're lying because the MLS doesn't even know yet. They haven't told us. All right. Yeah, Brendan, go.
Maybe we're not at this point where I can ask this question, but I was curious if you're going that route and you're putting in confidential agent remarks or wherever it's going to go that there is possibly compensation available, submit the proper forms. Are you telling your seller that you're doing that, or is this something that you're just kind of, winging?
Yeah. Yeah, no, very great question and appropriate question. I discussed this strategy explicitly with the seller. I told them, this is what we're going to do. Okay. I want you to take the 1% or the 1.5% rather, and I want you to put it in your pocket and know in your brain that that's what you're willing to do. I'm going to approach the MLS this way, and we're going to see what they submit. And the seller said, okay, I like that plan. The seller's thinking, well, I like that plan because I might pay even less, or I might say no. Okay, I like that plan because I know that it's going to be really, really hard for them to say no to everything, right? They're going to have to give somewhere if they want to sell the house. And it just makes sense to me in my brain that, and I could be totally wrong, that if an agent says, I want to, and we get that locked in on whatever form they submit, now we're talking about what we really should be talking about in the listing agreement anyways, which is, okay, if you know you're paying 2, where do we have to be over here so that you feel all right about all of that? Right? No different than anything else. But my conversation with John today was this. You know what we did with all this? You know what we did with these class action lawsuits? And you know what we did with all of these changes and everything? We did what my biggest pet peeve in the world is. We fixed something that wasn't broken. Okay. So now we're going to do the exact same job. We're just going to add 17 steps to get to the same place. But that's what it is. And that's where we are. Do not, Steve, are you still there? Okay, you're still there.
Yep.
Steve and I have these conversations a lot. Do not take a listing, Steve, because the seller says, I don't want to pay.
Well, I wouldn't. Well, it'd be interesting to see. So let's say the buyer's agent says, I want 2.5%.
Yes.
Okay. Their offer is good, but he doesn't want to pay that. Do you end up declining the whole 2 offers basically? Is that what you're going to have to do?
I mean, that is the question. Like, if they say, I don't want to do it, period, I think you are in essence declining 2 offers. You're declining an offer for compensation, and you're declining a residential purchase agreement.
Right.
I just don't think it goes that way, because I think that puts us in I hate saying this, but that puts us in a negotiating spot with our seller that says, wait, look, okay, if we know they want 2, let's just get it over here. What do we got to do over here to make you feel okay about that? Right? And that could be kind of like what we discussed with your Elk Grove transaction, Steve. We could be going old school, and it's like, okay, well, if you want 2, then you got to be 2 over here.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, and that's instead of maybe just a complete denial, it'll be, all right, a phone call. Hey, this is what my client is saying. They're willing to do 2% at your offer, but not that, and have them resubmit.
Exactly. Brendan, you remember that old school about 10 years ago? Every single offer that we took was a 3% closing cost credit, so that the buyers could come in with zero money down USDA or VA and get their closing costs paid and walk into a house with like $10 out of their pocket? I mean, I think it's going to be kind of the same vibe for the commissions. We might get to that point. And I mean, I'm okay with that.
Well, it seems like sellers are okay with those concessions as well too, as long as you show them on paper with the calculator. Hey, look, you're getting the same thing. It's just coming about in a different form.
Exactly. It's going to be about what it should always be about, which is net, right? Net to seller. Okay. We can, hell, we can pay them 5% if they'll go 5 or 6 over. It doesn't matter, right? As long as net to seller, as long as you're happy with net to seller, don't get hung up in semantics like, well, I just don't feel right about paying. That's
And
just dumb.
That's exactly the Elk Grove deal. I broke it down as this is your net. Let's not look at the other ones and not care how we get there, but this is what's going to be in your pocket when we're done, and that's what counts.
Exactly. Exactly. And hey, I get it because I am the king of principle. Like, no, I'm not doing it just because I don't want to. I shouldn't have to, right? That's just dumb. It's ridiculous. And I think that that's going to be a huge part of this. And our ability to do that is going to be the difference in getting listings and not getting listings, right? We need to be able to say, you know what, fine, no problem. You don't want to pay that? You only want to pay one? Tell you what we're going to do. You're going to put that in your pocket. You're going to know that you're willing to do it. We're going to offer the possibility of compensation. We're going to see what comes. And if something comes that you like, great. And if something comes that you don't like, great. Because either way, we're going to counter it. And it's going to be fine. Right? This is, by the way, I'm going to remind, this is only after you've had more conversations than you can count at an exhausting level about why they should pay something. Because still, it's a lot easier in the beginning if they go, yep, I understand the value in it. I understand why it's important. I'll offer 2.5 or whatever, and everything's roses. Okay. That's still better, guys. We can go out to market. We can say, hey, look, we've got a cooperating compensation or a seller credit or whatever we're going to be allowed to call it. We've got this money for a buyer's agent. Come and get it. That's still better. Okay. That's still my first default. And I mean it. Like, I mean, I spent hours, if not days, trying to talk these people into that 2.5. And it was only when I realized this just is not going to happen. We're at the point now where I either say, okay, let's give it a whirl, or I'm not doing it. And it got to that point. And I'll be honest, I thought about not doing it. Like, nope, I don't want to deal with this BS. Like, I'm going to stand on my principle and I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to do it. Find another agent. But that's just not real smart on my part. So I had to kind of rethink it, and I had to come up with a different approach. And that's what I came up with so far. When it all blows up in my face, we'll get together and we'll come up with another idea. But right now, that's the best I've got. Make sense?
I'd like to add too. I think you're not going to like this, Damien, but I think that in the situation you're in right now too, let's say you've got 2.5%, sellers agreed to pay that for you for the listing agent, and they've come to 1.5 for the buyer's agent. Now you could always get creative in the end. I think this is a last case scenario where you go, okay, look, buyer's agent, let's work together. I'm going to take 2 and you take 2. We'll make it even. You still have options there to make it work. There's still money there to be split and shared. It's not the whole 2.5, but it's a last ditch scenario where you can make the deal go still.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I hate it, but it's also the absolute smart move. So if it gets to the point where, let's say there's only one way to put together a deal, and that's going to be to maybe come off a little bit on the money and share the money more evenly or equally, then that is absolutely the best way to go. I've done it, some semblance of that, at least 15 times, since I've been doing this. And man, it's got to get bad. I'm telling you, it's got to be like almost it's going to fall out, or it's not going to go or whatever. And then I'll cough up some money. I'll cough up some of my money if I need to do that. But
Yeah.
I'm getting old and crotchety, and I've gotten to the point where, man, there better be something on fire if you want me to cough up some of my money. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But you're absolutely right, Brendan. If it gets to the point where it's the difference between putting a deal together or losing a deal, don't be greedy. Don't do it. Cough it up. You don't want to start over. You don't want to not have a deal. You don't want to not have an escrow. You don't want to stay on market on principle. You don't want to go back to market on principle, ever. Okay. Anything else on that, or should we drive right? Jess, what are you doing? You exploring? Yep, like nature walk?
Dog pee break.
It's a puppy pee party. All right. You guys ready for me to try and share the screen, and we'll get into the fabulous world of car forms? Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can figure this out. Bear with me. Sharing the screen. Picking up my car form. Look how fast I'm getting at it. There we go. All right. So, say okay to that. Get that out of there. All right. This is the latest version of the BRBC, the form that you're going to be required to use with every single buyer in 4 weeks or less. Again, I would do it sooner than later. I'm going to buzz through a lot of it. I would encourage you to all get into your car forms and read every single page of it. Okay. But I'm going to buzz through a lot of it. I'm only going to stop at sections that I feel are critically important to review. Fair enough? It looks a lot like a listing agreement, like I've said before. The first thing on the first section is the good old agency disclosure, the AD form. Talks about the responsibilities of agency and the responsibilities of fiduciary. Second page of the same. You guys have seen that form for years and years and years. It's got the fair housing disclosure. It's got the potential for dual agency disclosure. Okay, just like a listing agreement or a purchase agreement. It's got the wire fraud advisory. This one's new. It's got a broker compensation advisory, okay, which basically says commissions are negotiable. Okay, both sides, commissions are negotiable. It talks a little bit about how agents might get paid. Okay, again, I want you to download this when you got nothing else to do and read it, understand it. Then we get into the meat of the form. See if I can slide this window over just a touch. There we go. All right, we get into the meat of the form. They've already changed it a little bit up here. You've got the name of the buyer. You've got the name of the broker. Understand, guys, when it says broker, that's the company. That's not you. Okay. The beginning date of the agency, and now they don't have an end date anymore. They have a number of days, right? So I would say 120 days seems like palpable to a potential buyer. I'll preface this by saying there's cancellation rights on this that we're going to extend. So you're going to remind them probably 17 times before they sign this that they can cancel it if they don't like it. Okay. No pre-existing buyer representation and compensation agreements. This is really important. You're going to need to ask them, have you signed anything with anybody else? Okay. Oh yeah, I did. I signed with some lame agent. Okay. But it was a bunch of properties that we looked at a long time ago, and we're not going to do anything on them. Okay. So I want to list on my agreement that they contracted with some lame agent for previously shown properties. I want to probably get the addresses in there if possible, or the locations, so that everybody's clear, including me, that if I happen to show one of those properties to them, I could have a potential no commission situation, right? I'm going to avoid anything that they've already seen before. Okay. This is all about location. You can do a specific location here. You can do specific cities here. You can do counties here. Keep it broad, okay? Especially if you've got lower price level people. They all think they're going to live in Rockland. They can't afford it, okay?
Can you just put California?
You could put other and put California. That might intimidate a buyer a little bit, but you know, if you cover all the primary counties, I think you're safe. But if you want to go California, go for it. You can do it on a specific property. I don't want to sign with you. Fine. You know what? I understand you don't want to sign with me, but you do want me to show you this house. I'm going to need this agreement for this house, or I'm at risk for losing my license. Okay. After you do a great job with them and they love you, you can re-execute another one with broader terms. Or I want you to show me 3 properties this weekend. I don't want to sign with you. Hey, I've got to have a signature on a specific set of properties. Same strategy. I'm going to get it for a specific set of properties. Okay. And after you love me, we're going to sign one that's a little bit more broad. Okay. When we talk about compensation, I've already set up and shared with you a cut and paste for an addendum that describes compensation on the agreement. Again, it's a draft, but it's something that's better than nothing, and you can use it right now. You could use it tomorrow. It's in the shared drive file, the new agent folder drive file that I shared with all of you guys. It's called BRBC cut and paste. I'll show it to you, but just know that it's in there. You have it right now. Anything that I'm doing right now, I'm doing per an attachment, because I want to be, until we really understand how this works and how the rubber meets the road, I want to spell out really clearly what's going to happen, right? Now we go a year down the line, the form's been through 75 more tweaks. It's got different boxes on it. Maybe we don't need the addendum anymore, but for right now, I think we do. Okay. This part's important. You see, the broker's right to compensation is based on one of these categories. Okay. You're going to want to stick with the default for now. The default is, look, you're only going to pay me if I'm directly involved with you on that property. I showed it to you. I wrote it for you. You know, something like that. I had direct, palpable involvement on that property. All right. Box number 2, which is the box that we'd all love to check, but we're not going to be able to because this form is going to be scary for buyers, is it doesn't matter what you do, you're paying me, right? You had somebody else show you, you're still paying me. Somebody else wrote it for you, you're still paying me. You bought a for sale by owner, you're still paying me, right? We're not in a position to check that box yet. Cancellation, you can read this in a little bit more detail, but look, the bottom line is that you're going to give them the right to cancel. The agreement is terminated. Paragraph 4B, which is the compensation, expires 3 days after the termination of the agreement, right? So that means pretty much, you know, if you fire me, I'm fired. However, if you fire me and then I find out you go into escrow, you fire me on a Thursday, you're in escrow on a Friday, I'm getting paid, okay? This one we're going to spend a little bit of time on, and some of it's theoretical. Keep in mind that, you know, when you rep a buyer, my approach is, and you'll see it in the addendum, I get paid 2.5% to rep you, all right? Now, it's possible that 90% of that, let's say 2%, comes from a seller or a co-op. So you owe me 0.5. It's possible that I negotiate 3%. Well, if I negotiate 3% and I get 3%, you're only on the hook for 2.5%. I'm going to credit you anything beyond 2.5% that I receive. That's what that box is. Okay, so it doesn't matter where the money's coming from or how it comes in. If it exceeds what I've said I charge for my services, I'm going to give it to you. That's the feel-good thing that you can pass on to them that's never going to happen. Okay, It's never going to happen. You're never going to go long on commission funds. You're going to be scrambling for commission funds. Okay. The 30 days gives you the 30-day window after the thing expires to be able to prove, that you had participated on something. Okay. There's a couple of forms in here that we'll get into. This is all about payment through escrow. This is all about disclosure. This is all about what you're authorized to do and what you're obligated to do. Just as important, this is about what your buyer's obligated to do. They're obligated to participate and to respond. Who's paying for reports? The material issues, I love that one. It's their responsibility to let you know if there's anything that's a deal breaker up front. Okay. Mediation, transactional advisory, and investigation advisory. We'll get into those in a signature line. Now, let's scroll back up. Item 4A. That is our addendum. Let's look at what we've got going on the addendum real quick. Okay, forms and the addendum. All right, here's the addendum cut and paste that I'm going to suggest you start using. Okay, it says number 1, the brokerage charges a commission at 2.5% of the purchase price for our services and consultation. Number 2, commissions are going to be paid through escrow at closing directly to the brokerage, meaning that full 2.5% is coming from somewhere at closing, right? Through escrow. Number 3, the buyer is ultimately responsible for the full or partial payment of the commission at closing. This is where they're going to say, I'm not signing it, right? And then you're going to say, but wait, number 4, broker's agent is going to make an attempt to make arrangements for commission payment directly from the seller or from the seller's brokerage. This is our first choice source of commissions. Okay. In other words, we're going to get it somewhere else. Don't worry. And oh, by the way, we have to disclose to you whether or not that's going to happen before we write your offer or sign your offer. And number 5, in the event that the commission sourced from the seller or the seller's brokerage do not satisfy the commission requirement, the 2.5%, the buyer may elect to pay the balance through loan proceeds, aka you can finance it into your loan, or liquid funds at closing. All right. My presentation of this is you're never going to have to worry about that, Mr. Buyer, because I'm going to negotiate my commissions from the seller. It's going to happen. Okay. If you are in position to have to pay anything, you're going to know right up front. And then you can make a decision, because the other form that we have to include when we write an offer for you is this one. Form ABCD. Here's where we're going to list the property and the amount of commission that we're getting and the way that it's coming to us line by line. So the buyer's going to know, let's use this example. Okay, I know his BRBC says he makes 2.5. He's got listed on here for the property that I want that he's getting 2 from a cooperating broker. There's 0.5 in play. There's 0.5 we need to talk about. Okay, this is what I mean. They're going to know right up front what's in play and what there is to discuss. This is where they're going to start beating you up on whether or not you will just take the 2 rather than sticking to the 2.5 and everybody can be happy, or you need to go back to the seller and try and get 0.5. This is where the game begins, right? This is where the negotiating skills come in. On this same form, at the end of the escrow, you have to redisclose to them exactly how much money you got and where it came from. Okay? So the spirit of this form is that the buyer always knows how much money you made and where it came from and whether or not they have anything coming back to them beyond what you initially agreed to. If they do the math down here and they figure out you got 3, you owe them 0.5. You don't get to keep the change, right? You guys starting to get the gist of why the last meeting or a meeting before that or whatever was how to switch from a buyer's agent to a seller's agent? Sounds like a lot of work. And it is. Okay? Any questions on that stuff?
So cash, grass, or ass is probably not your going in there, right?
I mean, I hope it doesn't get to that point, Steve.
You never know.
But it could. Who knows? All right. The other thing we need to talk about, the other form that I need to show you is this one. If you get fired from your client, and this is in the contract, it's in item 4E. If you get fired from your client says, look, it's not going to work out, you're going to want to submit and have them sign this one. This means this is my list of broker involved properties. Okay. I had participation with you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, on these 3 properties, meaning that if you buy one of these 3 properties, because I had substantial involvement in them, broker direct involvement in them, you're going to owe me the 2.5 that we already agreed to. If you buy a property outside of those 3 properties, you owe me nothing. Okay? Super important form, because you know how it's going to go, right? We're not going to make all of them happy, just like we don't make all listings happy. Some point we're going to get fired, just like we get fired from listings. You're going to want to protect yourself by using this form. You show somebody, you work with somebody for 3 months. You're showing them 3 properties a week for 3 months. Okay. You're talking about 36 properties that are going to be on that list. Right? They decide to go back and buy one of those properties because it finally sat on market for 60 days and went through 3 reductions, right? And they've moved on to another agent and they end up buying that property. You should be paid for that. And this will allow you to do that. If you don't have this form and you go back and you say, hey, don't you remember I showed you that property? I've got it in my calendar. I've got the email where I sent you the MLS sheet and blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. You're going to lose. You're not going to get that money. Okay? Doesn't matter. Because not only is this a list of your involvement, but it's a disclosure to the buyer that says, you buy one of these, you're paying me. Right? You have this signed, you're going to get it. You don't have this signed, you're not going to get it. It's just that simple. Okay?
It's going to be fun to chase back down.
Yeah. I mean, Steve, you're absolutely right. And it's going to get to the point of like, do I want to do this? Like, but I mean, imagine that it's a buyer client that you maybe have 2 or 3 other contacts with as part of your sphere. You know, you hear through the grapevine that they finally bought a house. I mean, it could happen. It's better to exercise it than not to exercise it. Okay. So I'm going to flip through a couple of the other advisories that are attached to the BRBC. Sorry, we're jumping around a little bit. Again, if you have questions, let me know. BRC.
I got a question.
Yeah, go.
Sorry. How long is that good for? If you're showing the properties and you're listing those, or you're showing what you've been participating in, how long can that? Yeah. Did you say?
Good question. So remember, if we go all the way back up to the meat of the form, it's going to be this one right here. E, whatever this date is right here, this box right here. 4E. Assuming that you delivered the form NBIP, if they buy one of those that's on that form within 30 days, you're paid. So you could change that to 60 or whatever was comfortable, but I think it all happens in 30 days. Oops, there we go. Transactional advisory is another advisory. Read through this one when you have a minute to understand what's on the back of there. Their investigation advisory, we've seen that one for years. And the Privacy Act notice, we've seen that one for a few years now. There's our addendum again. that's going to be on the back of the BRBC that talks about how we get paid and how much we get paid. Broker involved properties. That's it. Right? So, questions? Pretty involved, right? Let's talk about logistics just so you can mentally prepare. Buyer says, I want to start using you. I want to start house shopping. You say we've got to have a meeting. How much time do you need to dedicate to that meeting, knowing that you're going to have to walk out of there with something signed before you go to work for them? What do you think?
An hour on the safe side.
I was gonna say at least an hour.
Yeah. I'd say 60 to 90 minutes is what it's going to take, depending on how many questions they have, depending on their comfort level. So you got to know, I mean, this is a dynamic we haven't had before, right? Think about the heyday of Zillow. You're a Zillow Premier agent. They call you. You're like, yep, meet you at the property at 4 o'clock. Let's get this done. I mean, we just never had to deal with this before. It's almost like a listing. You know that before you ever list a property, you've got a couple of hours of meetings and a couple of hours of other stuff before you know, all right, we're doing this. I'm signed on. Let's get going on this. It's going to be that way now with buyers. It's a 90-minute deal, 90-minute sit down. I think the only difference is, and this is to our advantage, sometimes, you know, where you go to a listing appointment, you sit down for that 90 minutes. Okay. Maybe they've got a couple other people they want to talk to. It's much easier, I think, for a seller to say, hey, we'll get back to you, versus I feel like the buyer is more in like a car buying mode here. Like, okay, I've said what I've had to say. I've done a good job. Are you comfortable with me? If you're comfortable with me, let's get this signed so that we can get going on your search right away. I think you've got a much higher chance just automatically of getting a signature at the table than you do with a listing, unless you're a real, you know, pushy guy like me at a listing. So if there's a positive in all of that, I think that's it. I think if you do a good job and you got them at the table, you're going to get them to sign and you're going to move on, right? You're going to get started. And then it's behind you. And, you know, we're going to be talking a lot more over the next couple of weeks about how do I approach an agent or a seller for compensation? What do I do? What's the move? How does that work? I mean, theoretically, when you talk about agency disclosure and the way it stands right now, you can't approach a seller for compensation. You're not their agent. And you have to respect the laws of agency. So that means you can't talk to the seller without the agent's permission. So how does that work? NAR. You know, like, how do we do that? NAR. But, you know, that's the way it's going to be. It's probably going to have to funnel through the agent. You know, you're probably going to have to make that approach at least initially through the agent, maybe always through the agent. Who knows? But we're going to talk a lot more about that over the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk about strategies to make that happen, and how to be successful at it. To be honest with you, I got to do some thinking about it too, because I haven't had to do it yet. So, okay.
So if it's gonna be a 90-minute buyer presentation, and we want to get their signature, should we bring soda and coffee and drinks so that they have to go pee and make them really uncomfortable like they do in the movies and during the interrogation? Make sure that, but nothing to eat though.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that that's a problem.
Honestly, if you feed them cheese.
Caron says that if you feed them cheese, it increases endorphins, and that's good. So you want to bring coffee and cheese. Coffee and cheese. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. 55. Whew, that was a lot. So, questions, thoughts, concerns, or, excuse me, what do you want to cover in the next couple of weeks to help us get ready for buyer side, seller side stuff? What do you want me to dig into and focus on to try and help you with over the next couple of weeks, if anything? Nothing, just whatever I feel.
I don't know. I don't
My,
even know what I don't know.
my job is done. Yeah.
Hey, will you two guys stay on with me?
Which two?
You, Damien, you, Brendan, about this thing I've been bothering you about for the whole last 2 days.
Yeah. No,
Thank
we'll stay on for a few minutes. Yeah. I got to help Karen with the KB Core spreadsheet too, but
Okay.
yeah, definitely. Okay. So, what was I going to say? Dang it. It's gone.
Sorry about that.
I know what I was going to say. Go to my Facebook page, right? Grab Don's new listing, share it. Okay. Don's got a good listing in Alta Sierra going. Did a real good job with the prep. Did a real good job with the photos. Got Travis out there, Heather out there staging it. Looks great. Clear section 1. All the home inspection repairs made. Super, super clean, super, super clear. VA, FHA, whatever. Okay. Great price, listed $525. Value's probably $550, $555. So it's definitely a good leader. Grab that, share it, make it your own, steal it, do what you got to do. Okay. Anything else?
Up in that's up in the hills, correct?
Alta Sierra. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys have to do the CAL FIRE thing for the fire abatement area?
Well, I mean, he didn't do that. That is a buyer request item still in Nevada County, but it will AB 38, no problem at all. There's no clearance issues on that house at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've got the one that's going to be coming up in Pollock Pines too.
Yeah.
And it looks, from what I can see, it's a 1/4 acre, but it's all clear all the way around.
Mhm.
It's only just the major tall pines around it. So
Yeah. Yeah. CAL FIRE AB 38. That's the way to do it. Steve, when you get your preliminary docs going and everything on that, make sure to ask them for their current insurance policies or their deck pages,
okay.
so that you can see what their current fair plan policy is and their current content policy is.
Right.
Nobody's going to, I mean, so let's talk about fair plan real quick. Nobody who buys a house today is going to get the same rate that the current occupant has, okay? Unless the current occupant just renewed it, okay? Because all of the rates are going up. But it's still better to have that information attached than not to have it attached. For instance, Don's house in particular, I don't know how he's gotten away with it. He still has a standard State Farm policy with no,
So do I.
with what?
Yeah.
Caron's got standard policy with no fair
No,
plan.
no fair plan.
Man, pay your bill.
Don't
That's
get
all
me
I
wrong,
can say.
they keep trying to wanna get rid of me, but they can't.
Yeah.
I keep fixing everything and then we get fires.
Yeah,
They can't cancel you if you have a fire.
yeah,
I get an extra year all the time.
yeah. Okay.
Cool.
I do believe that
Steve,
that information is.
don't light the forest on fire, Steve.
Nope.
Hey, to add on that too with the CAL FIRE, I do believe that it specifies in the NHD if that is something that's required.
Yes.
So that's something you could refer to and check on.
Yeah, the fire mapping is part of the NHD now. So you'll be able to understand if it's, but the Pollock Pines is definitely fair plan for any renewals. All of Nevada County, most of East Placer, is anything renewed there. I mean, meaning anything that we sell, I don't care what's on it right now. Anything that we sell in those areas is going to be a fair plan property. Okay. Even if it isn't right now, it's going to be at the renewal, right? I think I told you I sold one off of Luther Road in the city limits of Auburn. And when they renewed, it was fair plan. That's city limits of Auburn in a subdivision off Luther. It's bad. It's real bad.
No man's land.
So, just know it's out there and know that, when people ask you about it, just answer it very calmly. Like, listing I had in Grass Valley 2 weeks ago, somebody says, this fair plan? I said, yeah, the whole county is. Just is. So. All right. Any questions? Nope. Good to go. All right, then, feel free to jump off unless you're Michael. Michael wants to keep us on for a couple of minutes, so I'm not going to kill it. Michael, what do you got? The rest
Uh,
is all Dawn's listing.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. It's,
D, you want to
This-
stop recording? Sorry to interrupt you there,
Oh.
Michael.
oh yeah, thank you.